全部燃え尽きる。己の佐賀に嘘ついて善人ずらして満足か。おかなぜだどいつもこいつもなぜ俺を守ろうとする。知恵もん己に加盟なし、かようなものは島原の炎で灰となって。
This world can be a cold, cruel, and unforgiving place. It's filled with injustice, violence, and all forms of malevolent people. But of course, there are still people who want to make it better. People who, when faced with the evils of this world, choose to press on in spite of it. And they become our heroes. People remembered for ages to come that inspire and bring hope for generations. But the sad truth is, not everyone becomes a hero. A lot of the time, tragedy only serves to break down those experiencing it, leaving them to fade away into the vast ocean of history, at best a footnote in this grand tale. And sometimes, these people who are broken by the weight of their pain decide not to spare others from it. They choose instead to spread it, whether because they feel it's justified or they're simply lashing out in blind rage. Sometimes people just come to want to see the world feel the pain they do. They can become uncaring about the world around them. They transcend villainy because they're not doing this for selfish gain. They just want to see things burn. They warp themselves into something inhuman, something that can only be referred to as a monster. And one of these monsters is one of my favorite antagonists in the Fate franchise, Chiemon, who may just not be as monstrous as he seems at first. Chiemon is one of the first antagonistic forces we meet in Samurai Remnant. And I have to gush for a second, his intro is amazing. The way he just emerges wordlessly with Jean from the darkness, illuminated only by their own fire. It's just too damn cool! And even more importantly, it immediately establishes him as a menacing threat. But before we actually start diving into some more of his actions, let's take a look at his design. Chiemon is covered in grime and blood and scars. From the moment you first see him, you can tell this man has seen some shit. And his gray skin almost gives him the feeling of being undead. And it can probably be assumed that what little armor he has on him is probably stolen. Yeah, to put it lightly, Chiemon looks rough. And just as much as his own words are going to, those scars all over his body, and especially the ones around his neck, tell us that this man has a very, very dark history. But enough with the foreshadowing for now, let's get back to looking at his actions. Almost immediately after this, we see that he has a connection to Yui Shosetsu, the first antagonistic force we meet. And seeing him make an alliance with Shosetsu, as well as his own sneak attack he carried out moments before, it's easy to tell that he's not going to be the kind of guy to play fair. Shocking, I know. And it doesn't take too many interactions with the guy to realize he's not really all there in the head. His anger and violent tendencies are immediately noticeable. It is clear that he despises this society he lives in, and it's that vitriolic hatred of it that motivates him. It's clear that he's dangerous, unstable, and a threat to all of Edo. And all of that combined with the fact he is one of our most tenacious enemies makes him a force to be reckoned with. And yeah, this carries on through the game. He never stops being angry, he never stops cursing Edo, talking about bringing hell to it, and he never actually tries to fight fair, preferring sneak attacks and kidnappings instead. So he's a conniving, angry, violent lunatic. What about that makes him so interesting? Well, that's because underneath all the anger and hate and underhanded tricks, lying somewhere deep, deep within this monstrous man, is a scared, lonely child, lashing out at the world because he can't cope with the loss of his family. We find out very early on that Chiemon is a survivor of the Shimabara Rebellion, and further that during that event, Chiemon witnessed the destruction of everything that he knew and loved. Pretty quickly, it becomes apparent that even if he's not the kind of villain you agree with, you still can understand where he's coming from. Who wouldn't be angry after something like that happened? After someone you didn't even know killed everyone you knew, and that you personally did nothing to deserve it. It quickly recontextualizes his anger as something sympathetic. Although with his ending and digressions, it becomes a little more obvious that he doesn't hate the people who did that to him. Or rather, it's probably more appropriate to say, they're not the cause of the deep anger that drives him, because he hates someone even more than them. Someone that he hates to see. Someone that he cannot stomach being near. Because above all others, the person Chiemon hates the most is himself. Sure, he hates the Tokugawa for what they did, but even more, he cannot stand the fact that out of everyone, he survived. Not his mother, who he watched get dragged away by samurai. Not his father, who protected him till the end. No, the one who survived was the weak, pathetic child who could do nothing to help the people around him. At least, that's how he sees it. Chiemon is being destroyed by deeply rooted survivor's guilt. And he protects himself from that guilt, that pain, by masking it under layers and layers of hate and spite. His desire to bring hell to Edo isn't driven by maliciousness. No, it's simply another part of his defense mechanism. If he can bring hell to those who brought it to him, then maybe, just maybe, that'll justify his survival. And because of the logbook, we can see that somewhere in Chiemon's mind, he believes that bringing hell to Earth will in fact allow him to reunite with his family. Chiemon doesn't want salvation, he doesn't want help, and he doesn't want pity. Those are too nice for someone like him. He has sacrificed all of his self-worth just to satisfy his goals. Naturally, he feels abandoned by the world around him, so he's also incredibly lonely. And whenever he meets anyone who has also lost everything they knew, someone else who's seen hell, he still struggles to relate to them. No better is that seen than with his own servant, Jean. He acknowledges her as one who had seen hell, but he cannot understand how she's able to accept her circumstances. And to an extent, even though he never outright states it, it does seem like he respects her strength. And in return, Jean, to Chiemon's displeasure, shows him compassion and pity. She understands the pain that he went through, and even though she's incapable of saving him, at the very least she can be there so he doesn't have to be alone anymore. Although because of his self-loathing, Chiemon almost desperately denies her kindness and orders her never to show it again. And on the other end of things, we have Iori, who Chiemon also realizes has seen hell. But it's Iori's smiling face, his pretending that he gets along with Edo, that infuriates Chiemon. He realizes that Iori has seen the same things he has, and he despises the fact that he pretends everything is okay. He can see the demon lurking in Iori, something similar to his. Something that wants to cause mayhem, that wants to hurt people. Of course, the monstrous part of these two men come from very different places. Chiemon is motivated by self-loathing and guilt. Meanwhile, Iori is just driven by obsession. And when Chiemon sees what's really lurking in Iori, even he's scared by it. Because unlike Iori's inhuman obsession, Chiemon's drive stems from very simple human emotions. Chiemon's a child pretending to play the part of a monster to protect himself, but Iori, he's a real monster. But that's a story I've already covered. Anyhow, we still have to discuss Chiemon's ending. After obtaining the Waxing Moon and the 15th Servant, he uses them along with Jean's soul to become the Waxing Moon monster. The screams and cries of those who died at Shimabara ring out from the gate behind him as he becomes a hulking monstrosity, a being with no divinity that only seeks to destroy Edo. But one part of the beast sticks out more than the others. Setting itself apart from the red rotting corpse aesthetic most of the monster has is his left arm. While most of him is a shambling beast that looks like it's barely holding itself together, his left arm shines with a golden hue. Because even in this moment where he is unleashing unspeakable horrors on the world, Jean is still with him. It's no small coincidence that the hand that grabbed her from the sludge that made the Waxing Moon monster was a left hand. The same one that's glowing gold here. Of course, Iori and Saber are able to drive him back, destroying the Waxing Moon monster and ending the ritual. And the dying Chiemon is left alone on the roof of Edo Castle. And in his final moments, whether real or an illusion, divine or hellish, he hears the voice of his mother. He looks to the starry skies and comments that he sees them, the victims of the Shimabara rebellion. And in his final moments, he still isn't able to overcome his self-loathing, and says that he mustn't join them. Even when faced with what he wants most, he still doesn't view himself worthy of being with his family. And with him dying immediately afterward, it's ambiguous whether or not his soul joined them or not. It's a sad ending for a man who's consumed with hate for himself and everything around him. And it's not made much better in the other endings. In one, he's simply cut down by Ori when one of his sneak attacks goes wrong, and in the other he ends up fighting Castor, hoping to take his soul to power the waxing moon. Of course, an average human like him isn't capable of overcoming a servant, and knowing that he won't survive this final fight with Castor, he shows every last bit of his tenacity. He uses his remaining command spells to use John's noble phantasm himself, burning Castor and his own life away. John, who wasn't with her master, feels his death, and either has a somber or gentle scene, where she is relieved that her master's suffering and sinning has come to an end. Chiemon never really tried to get a happy ending, and he didn't find one either. He was an unfortunate man who was too weighed down by his trauma to look for a happier life. He went through something almost unfathomably horrible, and it twisted him irreparably. He blamed himself for deaths that weren't his fault, and he let all of that hold himself back from finding a better life. Chiemon is by no means a hero, but he's not a monster either. He's just a sad, depressed, lonely man trying to hide from his pain. He was only a child when he was exposed to the horrors of this world. He never had that chance to learn how to deal with his pain, so he took all of that pain out on the people around him, and no matter what, he pays the price for it. He's not some impossible to understand evil. He's an incredibly scarred man who has no idea what to do with all his trauma. His character designer, Rei Wataru, said that he was designed to never work as a protagonist, but still shine brighter than anyone else. And yeah, even if I think it's pointed the wrong way, I find his tenacity admirable. And as an antagonist, he is one of my favorites in the Fate franchise, and my favorite in Fate Samurai Remnant. So, in that way at least, I guess he did shine brighter than anyone. Thank you all for listening to my insane ramblings. Next video should be a lot more cheerful than this one. Hope you enjoyed, see you next time.